So this is the shelf that I use mostly for camera stuff, and it's always disorganized, and I'm always afraid of stuff falling out of it, and it gets dust like the rest of the shop. So it'd be nice to build some drawers that fit in here to keep this stuff more organized, keep it more secure, and mostly to keep the dust off of it. So that's what I'd like to do. I'd like to do this spot, and then I think as I'm doing these, I'll make shelves for the other four spaces. I can clean up the shelves. That was pretty easy. And start to sort the different things that are on those shelves. I can cut the strips for the sides and the backs. And I'm thinking I'll do more of a traditional drawer where I'll make the sides and the back sort of as a ring and then slide the bottom in to a dado in the bottom of the sides and the backs. And then I can measure how long I'm going to need to make all of these side and back pieces. The two sides are slightly different, which is strange. I'm not quite sure why I made it that way. I think if I make 5-inch tall shelves, that should work for both. These are actually a little different too, but that doesn't matter so much. So I have two sides to do. One side is 22 3/8, and one side is 24. The corners, I'm going to have a side, a little dado, and then the front. I want to have 1/8 of an inch on the side, and then I'll have about 1/4 of an inch of side. So that's 3/8 times 2, which is then 3/4. So what I want to do is subtract 3/4 from each of these, and I get 21 5/8 and 23 1/4. So I need to cut my fronts to these two lengths. I need eight of each of these. And then my sides are the full width, and they're about 12 inches deep, and I want to have a 3/4 inch face on this. So I think I'll make these about 11. So I need 16 11-inch sides. Don't you just love the English system of measurement? So I can start cross-cutting my strips, and I can cut these down to the lengths that I need. And I'll do the fronts and the backs first. Then I'll do the sides, and for that I can set up a stop block. And it's really quick to just cut a whole bunch of them. I guess I need 16. I have 8 drawers, so I need 16 sides. Then I can check to make sure they are the right length, and I should have 3/4 of an inch on the end, or a space between the front and the back and the side of the cubby. And it worked at both the front and the back. It means my cubbies are square. Now to do the ravet and dado to make the joint at the corners. So I set up the dado blade to do a 1/4 inch dado. And to make this joint, I start by marking the width of the piece of material and cutting a dado at that width. So these are the sides of the drawers. So I cut 32 dados, so 2 times 16 sides. Then I can cut a ravet in the front and the back, and that ravet will then fit into that dado. One thing that's nice about the new dust collection in the fence is it helps hold the workpiece against the fence. But it's nice for setting up the stop block as well, because I can put the piece exactly where I want it and it'll just stay there, and then I can move the stop block up against it. And with the dust collection right there, dust doesn't build up against the stop block, so I'm not changing the distance that I'm cutting because there's sawdust in the way, because it's all being removed by the dust collection. Then I can cut a dado in the bottom of the fronts and backs and sides. That's there to hold the bottom of the drawer. And once I have those cut, I want to cut the back piece a little shorter and not have the dado on that piece, so I can slide the bottom in once the sides are all put together. And I'll cut the pieces for the bottoms. And I can cut those to length. So putting the drawers together, I can put the sides and the fronts and backs together. I'll put a little glue in the dado, then hold it all together with pin nails. The glue is really doing the work, and the pin nail is really just a clamp to hold it in place while the glue sets up. This went quickly. There wasn't really anything to fit together or have to force into place. It all just kind of falls into place. Just hold it together with the nails. So I did all 8 of those. Once those are put together, I could slide the bottoms in, and they were a little tight, but they went in fine. And I did them where if there was any bow in the plywood, I would make that face up. Once the backs were slid in place, I could hold them in with some screws along that shorter edge. So once the drawers were done, I needed to make some rails for the drawers to slide on inside the cubbies. So I found a scrap piece of oak that I could cut into those rails. Now the bottom cubby and the top cubby are a little different in height, so the rail height had to be a little different for those. And the rail height had to be fairly precise, to give me about a 1/16 of an inch clearance on the top of the bottom shelf and then the bottom of the top shelf. Once those were made, I pre-drilled some holes. Now putting them in, I could put the lower shelf in place, then put a shim on top of the shelf, then put the rail on top of the shim, and it was in the right place. And I could just put the screws in and hold it in place. Then remove the shim. So the shelves are all in. I decided before I made the fronts, or the faces, I wanted to put some dividers in a few of the shelves. So I found some scrap pieces of wood to do that. And I just kind of laid out a pattern pretty quickly, and kind of based on what I knew I was going to put in there as far as my camera equipment. Then I can make the faces to the drawers. So I cut them to width. And once I had that, I cut each drawer out from that width. And once I had each face made, I then drilled 2 holes for the pulls that will go on the front of the drawers. And I'll use these holes to hold the faces in place while the drawers are in place in the cubbies. In doing this, I can line up the faces perfectly in place, so I can shim up each face and get it located perfectly. Then once the face is temporarily attached from the front, I can attach it from the inside of the drawer. Now to make the pulls, so I found a piece of maple, and I just sketched the section of the pull that I wanted to do. I didn't end up doing the angle on the top. I just made a spot for your fingers to pull the drawer pull. It's sort of a fat L. So I cut that out of the piece of maple. And once I did that, I could then rejoint and plane that smaller piece of wood. Then I could cut out the little finger space in the pull. Then it was just a matter of cutting each pull from that longer piece. So I made them 5 inches wide, and I got 8 pulls. And I cleaned up the edges just a little bit on the disc sander. Now most of the drawers that didn't have the dividers in them were a little bit easier to put the faces on, just because there was more room in the drawer to work. So once the face is attached from the inside, I can put the pull on. I can take the temporary screws out and attach the pull. Now I cut a scrap piece of wood that's exactly the right height to put the pull on in front of the drawer face. And this will hold the pull at the right height and hold it parallel to the drawer. And I can then clamp the pull to the drawer and drill the holes through the drawer into the pull, and then put the screws in through the drawer into the pull. These screws will help hold the face on and hold the pull in place. But then they were ready to go in. And I can at least start by putting away my camera equipment. One of the things I've noticed with the older drawers that I made, I like to pull them all the way out. They become a tray almost, or a box. So I almost think of these drawers as neatly stacked boxes on the shelves in the shop, if that makes sense. Because it's nice to just pull out the whole drawer as a tray and move it somewhere and look through it and find the things that I need, and then put the whole drawer back as a tray sitting on a shelf. So the rails and the sides just kind of hold the trays in place so they look pretty sitting on the shelf. Thanks for watching.